Hey guys, and welcome back to another Mark Diaries video. Okay guys, so before we continue with this video, I first wanted to kind of take a moment to just thank you guys so much for the love and support that I got in my last video. It genuinely made my day, my whole week actually. And funny story was that I was actually waiting to get to 100 subscribers, and I was at 85, I think, the time that before I actually posted that recent video, and I was waiting so I could make a little celebratory video, but I ended up surpassing my goal and I got to 270 something. But I really truly appreciate you all so much for that. And I read all the comments and I tried to reply. I think I replied to all of them, and yeah, I read all the comments, and I just want to say that it was truly so surreal reading everyone's comments. Sometimes when I make these videos I forget that people outside of my family and friends are actually watching them, so it's definitely really nice to hear all of your really kind feedback, and it really truly brings me so much joy and happiness to know that you guys are actually taking something away from these videos and actually find something in the words that I say. So I really truly appreciate you all so much for that. And I hope to be able to make more content for you guys and just to kind of continue this journey that I started. So yeah, I love you guys so much, and let's get on with the video. Alright guys, so as you probably have seen from the caption, today we're going to be talking about the teenage experience and what it's like to essentially be a teenager. So what essentially brought about this topic was that being a senior in high school honestly can be really fun and exciting, but also during this specific time of the year, a lot of it is filled with college applications and intern worries for the future. And I think I've kind of been stuck in that rut as of lately, so I kind of want to take this opportunity to reflect on the joy of what being a teenager can bring, and the joy of what this time and age can really truly bring you. So I guess the first that I wrote down some ideas in my little notebook, and I really love this notebook. I feel like I always use it whenever I have an idea and things like that. So the first idea I have in my notebook is essentially talking about the aspect of self-development. So as a teenager, I feel like this, I guess you could say the age group is probably 13 to 18, maybe late 12 to 18. But I think that everyone, if not most people, have kind of felt that pull of that next step into who you are when you turn 13. I know that for my 13th birthday, it was still pretty quote-unquote kiddish. I think you can do whatever you want on your birthday. For my birthday, it was unicorn themed, and I was turning 13, and I was proud about it. So I think that definitely when you reach those ages with the teen in them, it kind of promotes a new sense of self within you, and that is so true. I think that it is just such a pivotal part of your self-development, and being that it's kind of that buffer between adolescence and adulthood, I think there's a lot of room for navigation and introspection. And that's one of the things that I wanted to talk about, was introspection and how I kind of started with that. So I've always been a firm believer in prioritizing self-discovery. I think out of anything in terms of yourself, I think that self-discovery is something that we just do every day, and there comes a time, at least for me, when you start to actually prioritize it, and that was my freshman year of high school. My freshman year of high school was definitely a whirlwind. I had gone to this really small private school with only a few students, and then the high school that I went to before this one that I'm in now was pretty small as well, but still very large compared to my other school. So I think that when you get pushed into a different environment and are amongst other people of your age group who are also dealing with the same things and the same stressors that being a teenager may bring, there's a lot of stuff going on in your mind and with yourself personally. So not only does being a teenager or being 13, or whatever age it may be, like early on teenage years, I feel like there's going to be a lot of changes going on in your life, and these things all tie in together with one another. So I know there's a lot of like physical changes, mental health changes, and emotional changes that all definitely tie in with one another. And I think that for me, okay, sorry, I kind of dropped my mic there, but I think that for me, a lot of it has to do with how much you value knowing yourself and being able to just feel comfortable in your own skin before anything else. And obviously, it's not to say that you drop everything else that you're doing and kind of like go on this retreat to discover yourself and all that, like right when you turn like 13. But it's more so understanding that when you put value into understanding yourself and kind of really delving deep into introspection, it reflects on the betterment of who you become and how you interact with other people moving forward in your life. And that was my realization when I went into high school. And that kind of just continued on like further as the years progressed. And definitely for some people who haven't really watched my past videos, I talked about how I moved schools my senior year. So I'm at a new high school this year. And obviously that can be really daunting and really terrifying. But I think a major part of the reasons why I had to like kind of move were circumstantial, but also this idea that I had mentally that kind of made me realize that I wanted to be a different version of myself, and one that was completely honest and one that valued who I am truly, rather than like kind of, I don't want to say a facade, but someone that I wasn't truly 100% happy being and honest with myself. So that does take a lot of strength and a lot of willpower. So I always try to give myself some grace whenever I think of like everything that goes on in my life. But that's another thing, is with introspection, you got to give yourself a lot of grace and a lot of patience, because of the fact that there are times where you want to reflect visions of what other people see in us. And I think that mirroring certain aspects, whether that be good or bad, can have different effects based on like who you want to be. And I think that for me, a lot of the times I was mirroring things that I wanted people to perceive me as, and perception is always something that's a part of introspection, is the perception of yourself and how you want others to receive that. But I think that being a teenager allows you to kind of have more wiggle room in that, and you can reflect certain things that you want people to see you as, but it's always important to remember that your personal opinions of yourself always outvalue or outweigh the opinions of others. And I think that for me, a lot of the things that helped me were reading books about introspection, and not essentially like just self-help books, but whether that be like I read a book called A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara, and I believe I'm pronouncing her name right, but yeah, that book really opened my eyes on a lot of different things, whether it be relationships with other people and how you kind of manage that as you get older, or dealing with personal grievances that you really want to kind of settle as you get older. And one key thing that I took away from that book was knowing that, you know, when you're younger, you perceive things a lot differently than you do as you get older. And I think that there's a sense of beauty in that, because I think that when you become a teenager, a lot of those adolescent ideals, whether it be your opinions on the world or your opinions on people, a lot of those things become altered and somewhat darkened in a way, which can be really scary. I think that when you're a child, I think that a lot of perspectives and ideas are always going to be idyllic, and that's totally okay. But obviously there has always been a time or circumstances in our lives where we kind of realize the reality of certain things, but that's always good to remember that there is also that not everything is bad and not everything is good. There's always sometimes going to be an in-between. But yeah, books like that, and I feel like I should start like maybe I should do like a little book club video, but I really love reading. Oh my gosh, I love reading books. And I talked about in my last video, but books about like humanity and human philosophies and just human thinking in general are books that I really always gravitate towards, just because I feel like I could take a lot away from those books. But yeah, okay. And also, aside from books, if you're not a big reader, I feel like something that helps with introspection is listening to podcasts of people who might be in your age group, of people who might be outside of your age group. And there are a lot of podcasts. Like the first podcast I think I started listening to was Teenager Therapy, and I don't think they're really making any more podcasts anymore. I think they do like I think they have like a separate adult podcast now, like Navigating Your 20s, I think, which is really cool too. But a lot of like their episodes, which I really recommend, like I think they're still posted, but a lot of those videos, podcasts were really helpful to me, because I realized that, you know, some of these experiences that I was dealing with weren't super, you know, unique to myself, and I wasn't the only one dealing with these problems, and it was clear that other people had, you know, opinions about them and voiced their concerns and had conversations about them. And I swear by that podcast, and the one by Madeline RG. Madeline RG has some really good podcast episodes too, like I listen to them as well, and a lot of them are brutally honest, and I love that about it. And the Teenager Therapy one, it has like 3 people talking, which is really good, and then Madeline RG is obviously just one person. But listening to those 2 podcasts definitely opened my eyes to just how I wanted to live my life moving forward and who I wanted to kind of work towards becoming. And that's something that's just so beautiful that I gained from those types of videos that I used to watch. And I still do watch them sometimes. But that kind of leads me to my second point, which is your relationships with other people. And there are truly a plethora of relationships, and I guess like I'm going to just talk about the general 3, which is your family, your friends, and your romantic relationships. Alright, so the first aspect of being a teenager in relationships is your family. So I think that obviously there are different types of relationships, and your family is kind of like that foundation that sets you off with any of the other relationships that you may form in your lifetime. And I think that obviously when it comes to family, it's a very unique situation because of the fact that, you know, your family are people that you don't exactly get to choose in your life. They're kind of people that were given to you and sent by the universe, maybe, who you've kind of had ties with, you know, for the entirety of your being. And obviously being a teenager in a family can be really different and very different environment. I think that because of the fact that these are people that you kind of grew up with and have seen you become a child essentially, and are now entering the first change, I would say, in your personality and the first aspect of some sort of like personal development that is at a higher level than just being a child. I think that can be something that's very daunting and very terrifying. I know that, you know, at least for me, for my personal circumstances, I think that a lot of it had to do with like a lot of what I did in order to better, I guess, prepare myself for being a teenager, and my interactions with my family was always just being open to communication and having a strong sense of communication with my family members. Lucky to have, you know, a support system, and being able to have people to talk to. And obviously there are times when your opinions and your values won't align. And just considering the fact that these are a lot of people in different age groups can be something that's very, you know, daunting. And I think that just being able to offer empathy to others and offer a sense of understanding can truly, really propel you into having a sense of common ground with your family. And I think that it's so, so important and so valuable to establish boundaries with others. I think that with your family, there's a sense of almost a lack of boundaries because of the fact that, you know, as a child, I had always been boundless with my family in terms of just being comfortable around them And it's not to say that when you become a teenager, you lose that sense of comfortability among your family, but it's to say that you gained a sense of independence away from them. And I think that's something that can be really scary and, something that's not the most ideal when it comes to becoming a teenager. But I guess for me, like the minute that I turned 13 and kind of as I got older, I've been able to kind of interact with my family differently and grow into somebody that I want to be and who I want to put myself forward in terms of interacting with them. And obviously at the end of the day, if they're your family members, they're going to love you no matter what, and they can deal with the teenage stress and all the things that come along with being a teenager. And there's a lot of value in having and finding emotional support and support systems among these relationships that you may form. And I think that one of the most key ones is a family emotional support system. And family does not have to be by blood at all. It can be people that you find, and I hope that we can kind of like establish a little community and a little family amongst my channel and you guys. But definitely family can be something that is just really circumstantial and really unique to everybody. I think that's one of the most unique things in everyone's life is your family. And I grew up definitely in a very different looking circumstances from the typical or the general way you'd assume a family would look like. But there are certain things that kind of shape you to become who you are, and one of the biggest contributors is your family. And I think that in a way there's a lot of willpower and a lot of strength and courage in being able to be as honest as you are with yourself in front of your family. And I think that as a teenager, you're kind of navigating the way to do those things, but your teenage years are the most pivotal in terms of like finding these relationships and being able to establish a sort of like ground with your family members. But just offering a lot of open communication, a lot of empathy is, I think, what truly can really move you toward progressing as a teenager. And that's something that's definitely helped me as a teenager as well. Okay, so the second aspect of relationships that I want to talk about is friendships. Okay, so for friendships, there's something just so beautiful about forming and finding friendships as a teenager. I think that there are just so many changes and so many different things going on with yourself, and that's all going to be tied to like emotional and your physical and your mental health. All of that can really be very daunting, especially being put into a new environment. And I know that my high school experience hasn't exactly looked the way that I pictured it, but to kind of start, I guess, I had been attending a private school in my middle school, and then my next high school, like my high school that I went to before the one I'm in now, was somewhat larger, but still very terrifying because it was no longer private school, small classes, very like, tight-knit, I would say. Although my old school was very small and enabled me to like make really good connections with people. And I think there's the beauty in friendships, and the value of it is the fact that these aren't people who are given to you by life. These are people who you kind of find yourself and kind of look for and are attracted to based on the self that you've kind of been working on, the self that you've been developing. And I think that a lot of that ties to how comfortable you are with yourself. And obviously in any relationship, family is a little bit of a unique situation, but as much as you want to, and as much as you may feel an inclination to, I think that the most important thing is to find comfortability within yourself. And that really ties in with the introspection aspect that I was talking about earlier, is just being able to truly be comfortable with yourself enough to find people that you reflect those values in is something that's just so important and such a beautiful value to uphold in yourself. And I think that for me personally, I think that kind of like what led me to my circumstances now was obviously not all in my control, but and I don't know if I started to talk about it in my other video, but I transferred high schools as a senior, and that's something that's daunting and terrifying on its own. But I think that's something that's been helping me, like get through, is the idea that I've come a very long way from who I was my freshman year of high school, and I think a lot of that has to do with people I surrounded myself with. I think that ever since my freshman year, I have always been prioritizing myself and trying to understand who I want to be, and that's led me to make some mistakes, as like a lot of the time I used to mirror what I thought others would perceive me as. And that's another really tricky thing, is dealing with the perceptions of others. But I think it's always important to give yourself some sort of grace, and obviously remember that these are people who are going through the maybe similar situations as you are. And I think that's another really beautiful thing about being a teenager, is the fact that there are just so many other beings and so many other people in the world who are going through changes and experiencing differences, and you may think that you're alone in that situation, but then you find people who are just kind of reminding you that you aren't alone in the situation, and it kind of enables you to form bonds with these people. And a lot of these bonds are formed by your own personal values, and I think in any given friendship, I think that making friends as teenagers can be really nerve-wracking, because the fact that you assume that people can be really judgmental, and it may look that way, but honestly I think that from my personal experiences, everyone is honestly thinking the same way, and maybe others have figured it out earlier on than you have, but you're going to figure out eventually, and that's what always, I always have to remind myself that. And obviously, the most, I would say one of the most, obvious pieces of advice that people will tell you is to surround yourself with good people, but I think that advice is just so key and so true, because of the fact that the people that you surround yourself with become reflections of who you are and how they see you and how you want them to see you. And the people that you surround yourself with are obviously going to influence and impact you in a way that's not the most typical one I've heard is from parents, at least, is don't surround yourself with bad kids, because they'll do bad things and da da da. But I think, okay, that one, yes, okay, somewhat true, okay, but I think that you got to give yourself a little bit of a pat on the back and confidence in how much you know yourself and how you want others to see you and how you want them to understand who you are. And I have been lucky enough to have had some really amazing, I've had some friends, and I do have really amazing friends currently, and honestly, in all the friendships that I've had, I appreciate and I adore all of them. There's none that I can look back on and be ugh, I don't know why that was even a thing. I think that friendships are just so beautiful, and allowing people to be able to interact so comfortably with somebody is just such a beautiful thing to think about. I mean, I've had my best friend, I've known her for a really long time, and we actually call each other BFF LAH, which a lot of people have actually asked me about, which is a little funny. I never really tell them because, whatever, but maybe I'll tell you guys one day. But the first 4 letters, best friends for life, AH. So it's something, I guess, we made it when we were younger, but it's truly nice to see that we've grown into these young teenage individuals and are just kind of progressing forward in each other's lives. And it's truly something so valuable with friendship, is the fact that you're choosing people to add value to your life and to your life. And I don't want to be it's a gift to be my friend, but more so it's it's a gift to be someone's friend. These are people that are allowing you into their lives because they feel that you matter that much, that they'd care for you as much as to extend their life to you. And I think that's just such a kind and such a beautiful way to interpret friendships, because yes, it's really easy to say that friends come and go, but you are autonomous in those situations. Your life is autonomous, and you choose who's in your life. And, I think that I've got a lot of really great friends, and I love and adore all of them. And I've been making some new friends too at my new school, and I can honestly say that I have such a genuine care for them. And the people who have interacted with me at my new school have been so kind and so lovely. And, obviously I can't say that I'm fully there yet. I'm being showing my full self, which can take a lot of time and a lot of work, but I feel very proud that I'm getting there. So I really appreciate my friends for kind of always motivating me and allowing me to be comfortable with them. So yeah, I guess the key takeaway for forming friendships in your teenage years is to just surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with people that you feel are an extension of yourself, or who you see qualities that you might admire. That's also another thing, is admiration is different from jealousy. And I know that, being a teenager, I've been through it a lot. I've carried a lot of jealousy sometimes, and it's okay to admit those things. It's okay to be jealous of people, but also acknowledge that maybe you can turn that jealousy into something positive. I know that I used to be a pretty jealous person when it came to physical looks. I've never truly been a person who's been super, super confident in the way they look. And over the years, I've gotten really better in terms of how I perceive myself. And, a lot of that stems from personal reasons and personal circumstances. But, another thing, which is a little side note, but beauty is truly in the eyes of the beholder. And I think that also ties in with that self-development. I know I'm kind of going back topics, but I think that, beauty, physical beauty is something that's so arbitrary. And, people have their own perceptions and their own preferences for how beauty should look like, but it's not your job or anyone's job to kind of conform to that. I think that as a society, we've all kind of built this idea of superficial beauty in our head. And I think that there's just so much more to it than just your face or your body or just how you look from the eye, because the most beautiful thing about a human is their soul. So just remember that. And I think, carry that with you and carry that value with you. And that's something that's helped me as a teenager, because a lot of things can really influence the way that you perceive yourself, especially during this time of your life. And I think that the influences of other people and the opinions of others might get in your head, saying that someone else is much prettier than you and you're the same age and you have to look like this because you just have to. And honestly, genuinely, everyone is on their own path. And I think that it would be a great disgrace. No, it would be a disgrace. Oh my gosh. I think it would be a great disservice to yourself to not recognize the beauty that you truly hold, because you are beautiful. It's a bit of a side note, but at the end of the day, I think that the beauty of finding friends as a teenager is the common ground and the commonality that you guys share with each other. I think that everyone is figuring things out. And what's one thing that I definitely recognized over the years of making friends in my teenage years, in my youth, is that it's okay, and that the people you surround yourself with should be adding value to your life, and they shouldn't be decreasing it. Okay guys, so for the last relationship I'm going to be talking about, I don't know much about, but I'm going to share as much as I possibly can. So that's romance. So romance, I think, in general, before I go into actual relationships with romance, I think that romance is something that's just oh my God, I keep on saying the word beautiful, but it's true, a beautiful part of life. And, you see romance everywhere. You romanticize doing your morning routine. You romanticize going on your morning walk. You romanticize, doing your makeup, romanticize people. And just in general, I think romance is one of the parts of life that you always kind of look forward to and kind of add the joy to living. But when it comes to relationships, romance can definitely be very difficult and a little bit more different than any of the relationships that I've talked about before. Okay, so I'm going to do my best to kind of talk about the things that I kind of think about this side of romance, this relationship, just because of the fact that I think that I've experienced kind of like the skim of it, really, like if I'm being so honest. I think when I was 13, or no, I think I had my first crush when I was like 7 years old, and literally that like changed my life. I was like, wow, I love romance. And I think that I'm a bit biased about it because of all the movies that I've watched ever since I was young. Like my favorite movie is Serendipity, and that's the one with John Cusack and Kate Beckinsale. And I think that if you guys know what that movie is, like, I think you can understand why I love. But yeah, I think that teenage romance is something that's so different and truly something that you really only experience once in your lifetime. Maybe multiple times in your lifetime, who knows? All circumstances are different. But I think that a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's an exploration of physical and, physical, hormonal, and feelings of attraction, I think is what I can say. And I think that your body is changing, and that means also that your mind is changing, and there's so many changes going on. And when the difference that separates it from friendship is the fact that you found somebody that you're just so comfortable to be around that you kind of let your walls down. And so far I haven't been in a relationship before, and that's totally okay. I think that, when I was younger, I always like made sure, like in my freshman year, I was like, I need a boyfriend right now. Like, it's not going to be my high school experience if I don't have a boyfriend, and all that teenage, like all those teenage experiences and all those teenage like expectations that you kind of uphold as a kid. But I'm proud of myself, and I don't regret anything that I did or haven't done, because of the fact that it's allowed me to kind of be comfortable and be an independent version of myself. So I definitely think that, everyone's path is different, but in terms of relationships and being romantically involved with somebody, I think that, in a sense, if that's something that you look for, and for me personally, I'm open to having a significant other whenever it may be. I feel like another important thing about having a teenage romance is the fact that you aren't chasing, you're attracting. And that's something that's always got me through, is like, I'm not looking for it, I'll let it find me eventually. And that may happen when I'm a teenager, and that may happen while I'm an adult, but it's just something that's so valuable to you because of the fact that it may shape the way that you have romantic relationships in the future and how you perceive them. It may, like, having a relationship as a teenager might make you not want to date ever again, or it might change certain preferences that you may have. But I think that there's a beauty in finding somebody that you love, or you can say you love, not platonically and not as family, as a teenager, because of the fact that these are people that it's somebody that you're just so comfortable and so appreciative to be around, that you're willing to just kind of let them see the entirety of yourself and see who you are as a person, like deep into your soul. And the fact is that you also want to see those parts of them, and that you also want to be able to be there for them and be that person that they look for in a room. And I think that I've always romanticized romance and being in a relationship, but obviously as a teenager, or as you progress as a teenager, there's that kind of reminder that, there's a sense of excitement, but there's also a sense of reality that's found in having crushes, and that everybody is a person. And I know it sounds like that's really like obvious, but every person that you interact with is a human being and should not be overly romanticized for the idea of who they are, rather than actually trying to understand someone who they are, like for who they are actually. And I think that's something that I still need to learn to do. I think that I'm really big on romanticizing the idea of somebody, and then when I actually get to like know them in terms of like romance, I'm kind of just like, oh, I don't know if I like them, but maybe I can be friends with them, But that's always something that I've learned as a teenager. I remember my first like real crush, like official crushes and like talking stage crush, was my sophomore year of high school. And it went, I'm just saying it went, okay? It went, but I don't regret anything, because it made me learn a lot of things about myself and a lot of things about who I want to see myself with in the future. So I think that romance may be scary as a teenager, having those jitters, those first crush jitters, having your first kiss and all that. I think that those are experiences worth looking forward to. And, there's just a different sense of trust and a different sense of personal encouragement that you find within somebody else that can truly contribute to who you are as a person and how you are in the future. I think that kind of sums up what I want to talk about in terms of having relationships in your teenage years. But I think that the last thing that I kind of want to talk about is learning experiences. There are a lot of things that life presents to us in terms of things that we can learn from and things that we can take things but things that we can take away from. And I think that learning experiences are mainly rooted in terms of being a teenager in on the basis of making mistakes. And that's something that I always think about, is how I perceive making mistakes as a teenager. I think that in a little way, even if it's a subconscious or conscious thought, I think that we're all really afraid of making mistakes at this time and age of our lives, especially being a senior at this time of year. I think that I'm been really just overly conscious about my school grades and how I work my time and my time management and how I'm using my time, if it's gonna contribute to my college applications, if it's not gonna contribute, if what I'm doing is something that'll help me in the future. Just a lot of worries for the future and the fear of growing up, which is a completely valid fear. I think that a lot of us, although it might not be something that's super evidently there, I think there's a little part of us that always wants to go back to adolescence and kind of just go past teenage. It could be either the fear of growing up or just the wanting to grow up immediately. And I think that the beauty of being a teenager is the fact that it's kind of that in between that adolescence and that adulthood. And I think that it kind of serves as a grace period to make those mistakes and to learn from them. And I think that it's completely okay to acknowledge the fact that we aren't perfect people and human beings are not perfect, and the ability to find beauty in those imperfections. And I know that as one of the things that I want to fix about myself is my overthinking and my habits about thinking about things way too much. And I think that just ties into the topics I talked about before, whether it's relationships or learning more about yourself. I think that thinking too much can really truly be your downfall, but thinking enough can be that savior for you. And I mean is that when I get faced with problems, I like to do this thing where I overthink about them way too much. I just keep on thinking and thinking and thinking. And for a time, it can kind of become your entirety. And I think that a really important quote that I got from my stepsister, and I have this note in my notes app that was it is a note that I write down basically things what people or quotes that I hear or things that people tell me that I'm just whoa, I need to write that down right now. But she told me that the second you recognize nothing in life is forever, you begin to learn to appreciate things because of their temporariness. And I hope I said that's pretty slow, but when she said that, I was just kind of whoa, that's so true. Whether it be a good thing or a bad thing, everything is kind of temporary, and that includes our lives as well. But we almost always want the good things to last forever and the bad things to go as fast as possible. But I think that it's a very hard-hitting reality to recognize as a teenager that the good and the bad are both fleeting and they're both ephemeral experiences. And it's really what you take away from those experiences, whether it be something that you want to keep with you for the entirety of your lifetime. Maybe it's something that you'll remember forever, or something that you'll just remember for a little longer and just be okay, that was something, that was a time or something. And I think that Another thing that's helped me as a teenager is just to recognize that, I could not live life as an expression of an emotion, and life cannot be defined by a single emotion or a single feeling. I think that all of us are kind of living life that in between, and that's kind of like the epitome of being a teenager, is kind of being that in between, and recognizing that nothing is always going to be happy and nothing's always going to be sad. These are just keywords that can define our own experiences, and life presents us with opportunities to experience and to learn and to grow and to develop into people that we want to become. So I think that, really taking the time to make mistakes and genuinely make mistakes is totally okay. And I think that, you got to be a little proud of yourself for how far you've come. I know that I'm really proud of myself. And I know that my teenage experience hasn't been the way that I kind of envisioned it, or isn't the most typical. But I think that, it's okay to not be perfect and be open to having problems, and obviously not look for problems. But when it comes to being presented with them and having them like face to face, I think that as human beings, when we become faced with adversity, whether that be when you're younger, when you're a teenager, whether you're an adult, every reaction differs. But I think that being a teenager is kind of that pinnacle of the reaction, and it's okay to react in any way that you want to. I think that another thing that's really important about learning experiences is that the honesty and the values that we carry from them. And, making mistakes can be really terrifying, and we always want to be the best version of ourselves. But I think that it's important to know that it's okay to let go sometimes. And it's okay to not always know to do the right thing. And I think another thing to note is that in order to know to do the right thing, you have to make a mistake first in order to learn how to do that first. But yeah, I hope that made sense. And, just really recognize the fact that life will turn your world upside down. And there are things in life that will make you feel like your world is the entirety of that one moment that makes you falter, or that deviates from the joy that you've been experiencing. But I think that, it's always a really important thing to just be able to step outside of yourself and recognize what can I take away from this, and what do I want to add value to my life, and what do I want to carry with me, and what do I want to leave behind. So I think that that's a sense of beauty and growth and a sense of nourishment for your own soul. Alright guys, so I think I kind of talked about everything that I wanted to talk about. I think I talked about everything that I wanted to talk about in terms of being a teenager. But I did want to tell you guys one quote that my best friend told me, and I thought it was the most, I was like, whoa. You guys know what YOLO means, YOLO, you only live once. And I think for the longest time, when I was building up my teenage years, my early on, I think that I was always trying to be I'm going to live with a you only live once mindset, because that's what teenagers do. And I think that her response truly kind of eats it up a little bit. She said that you live every day, but you only die once. And I think that's just so, so beautiful. And I think it's the ability to truly be present in your teenage years and recognize that, yes, something that will end is inevitable. End is always inevitable. Is always inevitable. But being able to truly experience and make those mistakes, go on those dates, have crushes, make new friends, all those things, doing things that will provide you a sense of content and a sense of satisfaction in your teenage years. I think that that's the beauty of it, and that's the true beauty of being a teenager, is recognizing that to live in experiences, you have to make mistakes, and you have to be willing to take risks and be versions of yourself that you didn't think were possible. And there's so much growth and so much beauty in who you are as a person and how you're going to live the rest of your life. Yes, at times we will probably want to skip forward and just be an adult already, or for some of us, like I've talked about earlier, just go back to being a child again. I think that it would be a really great service to who you are as a person and to your teenage self now to skip past this time in your life. And honestly, in 20 years from now, I think that I'll look back on my teenage years with a smile and be proud of who I was and be proud of what I did and be proud of the things that made me become who I would be or who I am. But yeah, and before I end the video, I just want to say that I truly just want to emphasize how much I appreciate you guys so much for the support that you guys have shown me. I truly appreciate it, and it truly warmed my soul and gave me a sense of like fulfillment. Like truly, like I read all the comments all the time, and I'm gonna, like, I replied to all of them in my last video, but I promise I'm gonna continuously reply to them, because it truly just made me feel so heard. And I hope that my videos make you feel a sense of comfort and a sense of being seen. And you know, that's all I really want for my videos, is for you guys to take something away from them and to recognize that, you know, life is just so large and so beautiful and just something. But yeah, and also keep an eye out for that celebratory 300 subscribers video that I'm going to make soon. And yeah, guys, I love you all so much, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!